If you've been following me or you've been in the City Girl Savings community for a while, then you'd know that I have been in and out of debt multiple times. I have been in deep credit card debt because I failed to budget and control my spending. I have also been in debt because I thought I was investing rather than spending. My debt free journey wasn't a pretty one. In fact, my debt free journey was a lot longer than it should have been. You'd think paying off debt once would be enough to keep a person out of debt. I went through my journey alone, and to be honest, I'd gotten myself into debt and only I could get myself out of it. I want to share with you a few things that no one tells you about the debt free journey. This is solely my experience, but if you can learn from my mistakes, then it was all worth it. So, the first thing is, it is not an overnight process. I think this may be an obvious debt free journey observation, but it must be said. It's not that I didn't think getting out of debt would take a short amount of time, but I really underestimated the amount of time I did need. The thing about accumulating debt is that it takes minutes, literally, to put yourself years behind. I remember getting a promotional offer for a new credit card, spend $5,000 in 3 months and get 100,000 points or whatever. I easily spent $5,000. I got the rewards points, but I spent so much time and money, thanks to interest, paying it off. Getting out of debt took me years. I thought my income would cover my debt free journey and it would be over relatively quickly, but I was wrong. Things always came up that required financial attention, and that meant less money could go towards my extra debt payments. Just the thought of how long it can take to get out of debt may seem daunting, but the longer you wait to proactively work to get out of debt, the longer it will take for you to actually start building real wealth. Understand and accept the fact that it will take time to get out of debt, but do not let that stop you from trying. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. The next thing is you absolutely need a budget to be successful. I truly believe a lack of proper budgeting is what contributed to me getting into debt in the first place. I didn't understand what I could afford, and that resulted in me spending a lot of extra money I didn't have on credit cards to buy things I didn't need or shouldn't have bought. Now that I'm debt free, I only spend on credit cards what I can afford to pay back in the same month I spend it. If you do not understand your numbers, you're pretty much flying blindly using credit. Little purchases that seem easy to pay off can add up quickly. Not to mention, if something comes up and you need to spend the money that was supposed to go towards your credit card payment, you are now left with a balance rolling over. And that's when interest kicks in. A proper budget is the foundation for financial success. If you have debt, make sure you get your budget set up so you can see what you can afford to put towards your debt payments. If you don't have debt, but you want to use your credit cards for the perks or the rewards, get your budget set up so you can see exactly what you can afford to spend on your cards and then pay them off immediately. Another thing no one tells you about the debt free journey is you need to get to the root of what caused the debt. I feel like the focus is so heavy on paying off debt that we lose sight of what got us into debt in the first place. And I'm not necessarily talking about student loans unless you took more than you needed and spent it on things you shouldn't have. I'm talking about what drove you to use credit cards when you didn't have the money. Getting to the root of what caused you to get into debt is going to be so valuable for you actually staying out of debt once everything is paid off. If you don't fix the true issue, you could end up back in debt. The first time I was in debt, it was because of a lack of budgeting, a lack of spending control, and a desire to have things I didn't need. This wasn't the exact reason I got into debt the second time, but a lot of the deeper issues were there that second time. So, the second time I got myself into debt was because I went crazy with spending money on marketing for my business. This business, actually. I saw how much website traffic I was getting when I paid for marketing, and I wanted that nonstop. I didn't have a budget that outlined how much I could afford to spend on advertising. I didn't have control over how much I was spending. I justified all of the credit card spending on the fact that I was investing in my business. Marketing can be a black hole. I did not see a return on my investment, yet I continued to spend money I didn't have on advertising. Completely different from the first time I got into debt. I was no longer really accumulating material things and experiences. However, the same root cause was at play. The next thing no one tells you about the debt free journey is don't think you can't get back into debt. Okay, so this leads me to the final point. Just because you got yourself out of debt the first time does not mean you won't get back into debt. I learned this lesson the hard way. I really convinced myself that I was doing things differently. I tricked myself into thinking I had a handle on my credit card usage. The reality was that I was spending money I didn't have because I wanted what I wanted when I wanted it. The exact same root cause that got me into debt in the very first place. Mark my words. If you do not get to the true issue of what caused you to go into debt in the first place, you will very much likely end up back in debt. You have to fix the true issue to get debt free and stay debt free. It is not easy and it does require you to look in the mirror, but it's so important. We all make mistakes. Nobody is perfect. Instead of kicking yourself and feeling bad about where you are, promise yourself that you will fix the true issue. Get to a mental headspace where your debt does not control you or overpower you. You can get out of debt, you can stay out of debt, but only if you do the work. And trust me, it is totally worth doing the work.